We all know that managing a national team isn't the most exciting part of career mode, but I'm here to tell you that with a little bit of role-playing, international management can actually be made more engaging and more enjoyable. I'm not going to lie and say it'll make your career mode super fun, but if you combine some of these ideas with your own, I can promise you'll enjoy managing a nation and maybe even be opening some of those offers you get in your emails from smaller countries. I think the first thing we need to talk about today is rebuilding a national team, because this is probably the most fun way of actually playing with them. It's an excellent way of getting a taste of international management while also being able to play with your favourite players at your club. You can select a nation that has a weak squad and then instantly start scouting your youth academy for young talent. You might not know this, but the offers you get are actually directly related to the ability of your squad. So if you have a squad of around 3 stars, you'll only get offers from the likes of China, Finland and New Zealand. If you're managing a 5-star team, you might be offered someone like France, Spain or Argentina. But did you know you can actually guarantee you get the nation that you want to manage? It's actually really easy to do too. Save your game on the first day as a month, simulate until you get an offer in the same month, and then reload your save. Because the offers always come on the same day, you just save the day before you get the offer, constantly reload and play that single day until you get the team that you want to manage. Of course, this will be related to the team you're managing's overall rating, as we just said, so you can't get Spain while managing in League 2. Anyway, back to rebuilding a nation. Of course, you can sign young players for the club and train them up until they're ready to be called up for the national team. This way you get the satisfaction of building a team from scratch, but you also get to see them develop under your management, and you can develop a club at both club and international level. This means that you can try and do something like winning the World Cup, which is probably the ultimate goal for any manager in the world, but something that I don't think any FIFA career mode players really are that interested in doing. You can pick a nation that has never won the World Cup, for example, try and make history for them. This can be a long-term project, and it also gives you a reason to keep playing even if you're a bit bored of playing with your club side. The biggest issue with the World Cup on FIFA is how it's actually generated in-game. As FIFA 23 doesn't actually give you a chance to play in Qatar, because in FIFA's opinion, the World Cup happens only in the summer, this means you'll have to wait until 2026, 2030 or 2034 to get a World Cup in your 15-season career. The fact that you have to complete a full 4 seasons before playing a World Cup in career mode is a bit annoying, and you're even less likely to get the team you want for the World Cup too. If you manage to get the job you want in Season 1, that means that you'll have to keep it for 3 years while playing some fairly boring friendly matches and try not to get sacked from the national team. I think the best thing to do is try and find a team a couple of months before the World Cup, because then you don't have to play all the qualifiers, even though it's not that realistic for a team to actually change manager a month before the first World Cup match. Another way of making international management more exciting is by using players you've never tried before. Of course, you get access to basically every single player from a nationality, so if you're managing England, you can pick a full team of League 2 players if you really want, and the chances are you've never used any of them. If you pick a smaller team, I'm sure most people watching this video haven't actually used any of the better players from some of the nations like Finland, Hungary, South Africa or Ecuador. They're all on FIFA, you should use them if they're available for you to try. Lastly, you can try and recreate history. It's a fun way of trying to make international management a bit more engaging. Try and relive some of those historic moments of the World Cup, or maybe try and recreate a legendary team that won the World Cup in the past. You can choose the same tactics, formations and players used by those legendary teams and see if you can replicate some of their success. This can be a bit nostalgic, and you can relive some of the moments that did really bring life to some of these international teams. To help you out, I've actually found 5 national teams that you can control in FIFA that I think would be fun to try and rebuild, recreate or develop into footballing powerhouses. First one, of course, is Hungary, who were once one of the strongest nations in Europe. They reached the World Cup final in 1954 and lost to West Germany, despite being the strongest team in the world at the time. They dominated the international scene for the whole of the 1950s, although nowadays you probably only know them from players like Dominik Szoboszlai or their goalkeeper Golaski. Back in the 50s, they were known for their innovative style of play and actually produced some of the best players the world has ever seen. Ferenc Puskás, of course, is their most famous, but even players like Zoltán Csibor have the reputation of being one of the best players of all time. However, their national team, of course, hasn't actually achieved anything significant in the past few decades. I think Hungary's a really good option if you move the Hungarian team from rest of world, put it in a different league, maybe put it in Austria or Italy, depending on what kind of football you want to try and play, and then see if you can redevelop that team while also redeveloping the national team and see if you can get really far in a World Cup. Of course, you'll have about 4 years where you'll have some of your better young players will actually be developing to be the right ability to get into a World Cup, so Hungary is a really good option. If you want a better team instead, you can of course take over the Dutch national team. They've got a long history of success, having reached the World Cup final 3 times and won the Euros once. Of course, they're known for their attacking style of play, the famous total football system that they developed in the 1970s. I talked about how to implement that on FIFA in a recent video, so check that out if you do decide to take over Holland. However, they haven't actually won an international trophy since 1988 and have struggled to qualify for major tournaments in recent years. This means that you can take over a team from the Eredivisie, maybe an Ajax, a PSV or a Feyenoord, try and bring through as many Dutch players, young Dutch players with really good youth scouts as you can, and see if you can rebuild the national team to be as good as it was back in the 1970s, where it seemed like every single good player in the world came from Holland. Another team that had a lot of footballing heritage a long time ago is Scotland. While they haven't qualified for the World Cup since 1998, Scotland have actually qualified for it 8 times in the past. They've got a lot of good players, including probably the best left back in the game in Andy Robertson, and as a country that's known for actually creating really good players like Kenny Dalglish and Dennis Law, you're going to have to try and recreate and redevelop Scotland into being another footballing powerhouse. They're one of those teams that seems like they always have a few good players but never enough at the same time, so just try and bring through 11 really good players and see how far you can take Scotland. Uruguay is another team that has a bunch of good players but never all at the same time. Of course, they did win the World Cup twice in the early 1900s, and they have produced some of the best players recently that have played in European football. People like Diego Forlan, Luis Suarez and Edinson Cavani have been consistent goal threats no matter who they played for. However, their national team hasn't actually had any success in recent years, and again, they're another team that has struggled to qualify for major tournaments, so why not see if you can get Uruguay a 3rd World Cup? The Czech Republic is the final team I'm going to recommend. They were once one of the best footballing nations in Europe, having reached the Euro 1996 final and the semi-finals of Euro 2004. They're known for disciplined play. They had some really good players in the past like Pavel Nedved, Karol Poborski, Milan Baros. However, their national team, again, hasn't really done too much recently. So you're going to have to try and rebuild them. Czech Republic has a lot of very good, highly rated players on FIFA at the minute. I'm sure everyone's used Adam Hložek at some point in the past. And just try and rebuild them, see if you can get them to be good at the World Cup again. So there you have it. These are some ways you can play international management and make it a bit more enjoyable and exciting in career mode. Whether it's by rebuilding a team, winning the World Cup, using new players or recreating history, international management can be a good addition to your FIFA experience. I hope you found this video helpful. Of course, don't forget to check out the 2 videos that are on the screen right now, including a rebuild I'm doing with Manchester United on my 2nd channel. But thank you all for watching. I'll see you soon. Cheers and goodbye.